Time travel, huh? I mean, who hasn't thought about hopping in a time machine and seeing the dinosaurs? Or maybe just fixing a past mistake or two. But is any of that actually possible?
Yeah, well, that's a question for the ages, isn't it? And, well, one, we might not have an answer to anytime soon. But today we're going to be taking a deep dive into a text file that explores that very idea, time travel.
It's just titled timetravel.txt. Pretty straightforward.
Right to the point.
But the ideas inside? Not so straightforward.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
What's really fascinating about this file is it almost debunks the idea of time travel, but by proposing this completely new model of reality.
A new model of reality. Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
So this file calls it changing space.
Changing space. Okay.
Yeah.
It already sounds kind of mind-bending.
Yeah, it is.
So what exactly does changing space mean?
Well, it kind of flips the way we normally think about reality on its head. See, we typically think of the universe as like a bunch of separate objects, right? Like stars, planets, you and me, all distinct, all interacting.
Yeah, makes sense.
But changing space says, nope, not quite. It proposes that everything, and I mean everything, is actually part of one single unified substance. And this substance, it's constantly changing.
Whoa, okay, so not separate building blocks, but one big cosmic everything.
You got it. It's like, imagine a pond, right?
Oh.
You see all these waves on the surface. They look separate, distinct, but ultimately they're all just part of the same water.
I'm starting to get the picture. So everything's connected, everything's in flux. But how does this tie back to time travel? And what does it have to do with, well, the fuzzy boundaries we see in the quantum world with things like bosons and fermions?
Ah, good question. You're already making the connections. That's where things get really mind-blowing. See, even in our current understanding of physics, the boundaries of things like bosons and fermions, the particles that make up everything around us, aren't always so clear-cut.
Yeah, quantum fuzziness and all that.
Exactly. And changing space takes this idea and runs with it. It says all boundaries are ultimately fuzzy.
Just like it's hard to say exactly where a wave starts and ends in that pond.
Precisely. The distinctions between things, even you and me, become blurred in this model.
Whoa. Okay, so if everything's essentially one big interconnected thing, how does that impact the possibility of time travel?
Well, the source makes a pretty compelling case. It argues that if you tried to move any complex object, like, say, a hypothetical time machine, through this constantly changing substance, it would just cause massive disruption.
Be like trying to pluck a single wave out of that pond without disturbing the rest of the water.
Exactly. It just wouldn't work. The interconnectedness of it all, this lack of truly separate entities within changing space, makes the idea of isolating something to send through time really problematic.
Makes sense. But there's another big piece of the time travel puzzle, right? The idea of determinism. If everything's part of this one substance following a set of rules as it changes, doesn't that mean everything's predetermined? That our future is already set in stone?
That's a great point. That's a question that's plagued philosophers and scientists for ages, and it's something timetravel.txt digs into quite a bit.
So how does changing space handle this whole determinism thing?
It's a bit of a twist. It's like there are two levels to it.
Okay, I'm listening.
So there's the classic Newtonian view of determinism, right? Where the universe is like a giant clock, every event predetermined from the very beginning. But changing space introduces a more nuanced perspective.
Okay, so it's not that simple.
No, not quite. It is deterministic at a fundamental level. This underlying substance follows set rules as it changes. But within that framework, there's actually room for a degree of non-determinism at the local level.
Wait, so it's deterministic in the grand scheme of things, but there's still some wiggle room at the individual level.
That's the idea. It's kind of like, think back to the pond analogy, right? The overall movement of the water might be predictable, but the individual waves on the surface, they still have some freedom to form and interact in their own unique ways.
So even if the universe is ultimately deterministic, this suggests we might still have some degree of free will.
That's one of the big takeaways here. Timetravel.txt isn't just saying time travel might be impossible because of this model of reality. It's challenging us to rethink our whole understanding of the universe and even ourselves.
Yeah, it's a pretty big shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, if everything really is interconnected, all part of this single flowing substance, what does that say about how we see the world? About what it even means to be an individual?
Really makes you think, huh?
Definitely food for thought.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into timetravel.txt. It's a file that takes us on a wild ride through physics, philosophy, and even our own sense of self.
And who knows, maybe someday, with a little more understanding of this changing space and the nature of reality itself, we might just crack the code of time travel after all.
Well, maybe not. But either way, the journey of exploring these ideas is pretty amazing in itself.
So, to our listeners out there, we'll leave you with this. If everything is truly interconnected, like timetravel.txt suggests, what does that mean for your place in the grand scheme of things? Keep pondering, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the unknown.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.